Well, we're going to say a lot of the cars that would have been competing in the late sort of noughties into the early teens. And the growth of GT3 globally is just unbelievable. And the cars, the manufacturers that have supported it, and particularly in SRO, which has got the event this weekend at Paul Ricard, there are no direct manufacturer involvements. That was a deliberate ploy by SRO. In some of the other events, WEC or maybe in North America, then there is more direct factory involvement. But these are the cars, just looking at the Lamborghini going through shot into Madrid, that would have been the sort of the beginning of the journey of GT3 to where it is today. And the current GT3 car is nearer to what I would call a silhouette GT3 car than a production car brought up to a GT3 spec.
Entirely so. They really have moved on. But these early ones, as we can now call them, now have their own historic racing series. I was talking to Ollie Bryant down in the paddock. He's in the background. He's just out of the shot in his BMW Z4. He said, I raced this. I won the Silverstone 500 in 2013. It's now historic. Where does that put me? I said, in the sunshine at Goodwood.
Bruce, what do you do if you've got a GT3 car that is no longer homologated, or it's no longer competitive with the front of the field? And they all just sort of gather dust. They all were going to be future barn finds, one might say. But this race series, which has been Sean Lynn and his father, Sean Lynn has created the series for cars that were effectively retired GT3 cars. And some of them are going to be here. You can see coming through the Lamborghini, the tail of the field, the Audi. And of course, Audi were one of the major manufacturers that embraced GT3 racing. They made 130 or plus GT3 of the Audi R8 LMS and various versions of that. So it has been a phenomenal success on a global platform, and for many drivers the instincts that people would have had for GT3 racing was maybe it's something that people that were maybe more senior in terms of age and wanted to go motor racing, or drivers who had a competitive career want to sort of taper down, and that's how it all began. But now you're finding lots of young drivers who are not able to make progress in the single-seater world gravitating into GT3 racing. So you've now got single-seater racing with a GT3 car.
Now, looking on screen at one of the McLarens down there, MP412C, and Chris Goodwin is on board. You can see the orange helmet. Of course, he did a lot of development work for McLaren. He's involved with the Garage 59 team and just can't stay away from racing. So great to have him here. He'll also be out in a Formula Junior, which will follow straight on after this. But what we're having, John, is the demonstration of the cars. There are another half dozen static displays in the paddock, certainly drawing the eye, but then we're going to have the shootout. Some of the top GT3 drivers who've made a career out of it, going to put one at a time laps down. It's going to be super special, but it's just great to see these early days GT3 cars.
Yes, the cars look, I would say, truer to the basic GT3 or the basic GT car on which they're based. But as time has progressed, the cars have grown, they've gotten larger, they've certainly gotten wider. I mean, just looking at the back of the BMW there going into picture, that is what I call a mid-engine, front-engine GT3 car. Great success. They won at Spa 24 Hours years ago. That car's now being superseded by the M4, which is a true silhouette GT3 car. And looking at the tail there of Aston Martins and Audis and others, Corvettes somewhere in that, I'm just looking to see where it is.
And it's when you think you know all the cars, you've seen them in the European Championships, but because GT3 is global, there are some cars that are coming in from all around the world. The scene is burgeoning. In fact, there's the opening round of GT World Challenge Asia this weekend at Sepang, 30 plus cars, 57 down at Paul Ricard. Then you have some competing on the long distance races at Nürburgring, etc, etc. And of course, the secondary class in the World Endurance Championship is GT3. So there are many places you can go and race. There is a uniformity and slight differences here and there. But the beauty of these cars, they were developed so that a less experienced driver could be brought on. It wasn't about the pros, it was about the AMs, and that has been the essence of GT3 racing ever since. Stefan Rattel came up with the formula, and it's worked ever since.
Yeah, so certainly in the SRO series, the AM drivers, or the private entrants, are very much cared for by the series, and while you've got now more and more pro drivers coming into the championship, and those are the drivers that will be the race winners by and large, there still is a place for the gentleman driver or the talented amateur driver to go out and compete in a 1 hour sprint or a 3 hour endurance. This weekend, Paul Ricard, 6 hour endurance, and of course 24 hours of Spa at the end of June. I mean, one of the most demanding, toughest 24 hour races in the motorsport calendar.
Yeah, guess what? This year, the 3 24-hour races for GT3 cars come in consecutive weekends. So some of the drivers race the Le Mans 24 hours, then the Nürburgring 24 hours, not easy races, and then the Spa 24. I'm covering all three. I have a feeling I'm going to be quite weary at the end.
Bruce, what you're doing is nuts. Some of these drivers are doing, I mean, Nürburgring 24 hours, you've got to contend with all sorts of weather. Very often the race has to be stopped in the middle of the event simply because the track conditions are so diabolical, rain or fog or one at the same time. And at Nürburgring, the length of the circuit, you get different weather patterns anywhere around that long circuit.
One of the beauties, we talked fleetingly about balanced performance. The whole idea is you draw cars that look entirely different, they look identifiable, and for years we had the BMW M6 and the Bentley Continental, fast cars in comparison to, say, a Ferrari 458 Italia or something, but the brain boxes worked out how they could and should have their performance set to achieve an identical lap time. Of course, they can deliver it in different ways at different points on the lap. Black magic was involved, but it has been a formula that works, and it means you can have these different shapes. You love a particular manufacturer, that car will be competitive.
Well, one of the reasons why we've got this balance of performance in part of the fundamentals of GT3 racing is to stop a single manufacturer from coming in and the kind of one brand domination that you see certainly in Formula One, that is not a part of GT3 racing. So this balance of performance essentially equals out the big advantages one GT3 car may have over the rest of the field. I mean, Mercedes, you see, this is the SLS, not the current GT3 Mercedes AMG. That would be down at Paul Ricard this weekend. That was the pathfinder for the GT3 AMG.
It was, and they really learned lessons. Two things came out of this. Don't do a car with gull-wing doors. That often was a problem when they'd pop when a driver had left the pits. You try negotiating with Warner when you're trying to reach up, grab a tiny door handle and pull it down. But also when they moved on from the SLS to the AMG, the current model, they designed it even more towards the gentleman drivers so they could get their maximum out of it and then start advancing. You don't want it set up for the pros. It will scare the AMs, and the success has been with each subsequent evolution or new model coming in, they make it more driver friendly.
Well, certainly the current AMG GT3 would be, I would call, maybe one of the most benign of all the GT3 brands out there. The SLS, the car we're looking at right now, and again with the gull-wing doors, I mean, a lovely design feature. I mean, this is a road car that was then modified for racing, but there were shortcomings coming into the pits, and your door had to go up rather than out. So it did cause problems. So there's another unique brand. We don't see very much of Morgan Racing, but big mistakes. That is a very quick little car all the way from, is it Worcestershire? Malvern, Malvern Hills and Worcestershire.
Yeah, absolutely so. There have been changes of ownership management, but still there is a bloodline that's absolutely crystal clear where that came from. It came into the championship in 1997, and it was the FIA GT Championship. They sort of came back to modern racing, and then as GT3 came, a far more streamlined version came. We're looking at it now. Sturzer was involved, and Dimitri Engelbert, Johan Boris Shire, the names are on the. I love it when the drivers appear, still have their name above the door, but something different, balance of performance, put them on an even playing field.
Well, you might say that Morgan is the essence of GT3 racing because it is the road car. I mean, I think there's still, in fact, some of the construction of the current going Morgan has an ash frame on which the body is then attached.
Right, what we haven't talked about is really what's under the hood of most of these cars, under the bonnet. Their engines are around 600 horsepower. In the case of the Morgan, it was a BMW unit. And they all had their individual engine notes. The V10's in the back of the Audi R8. It's been such a staple. And, you know, Aston Martin would do things differently as well. But it's the identifiable body shape that really stands out, because you have your favourites, and then again you have different teams that you like more than others, different drivers. But some of the drivers who cracked the GT3 whip very early on are still making a fantastic career out of it. And of course, as I said, it's now the secondary class in the World Endurance Championship as well. They've got places to go racing, go playing, and the likes of, say, Jules Gounon and others, that they'll have their passport in the pocket all year round. They're travelling the world to go racing now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a global race series, and there's championships throughout the Far East, through Europe, North America, Australia, and I mean, any nation that's got a motor racing championship will have a GT3 category at some place in that calendar. And the Audis here looking, I mean, they're talking to Christopher Haase earlier this morning, who's driving one of these Audis right now. Christopher Haase has never been to Goodwood, and he just wanted to come here so badly that he decided to drive here, not on his road car, but he brought his own personal motorhome. He's actually sleeping off-site in the caravan park. Christopher Haase, I don't know what his motorhome is, it'll be on a German registration, and he had never driven the circuit until now.
That's how we like it, but you know full well his ear would have been bent by the other contemporary drivers who've come and experienced. Now here's a car from period 2013. Ollie Bryant, who's on board at the moment, won the Silverstone 500, and he's out reunited with the car. He was the one who said, oh my gosh, I'm now a car I race as contemporary is now in the historic world, but he's getting over it. He's absolutely loving it.
I mean, what does it say about the car? What does it say about Ollie Bryant? I mean, well, we have always looked at Ollie Bryant as being one of the young up-and-coming drivers, not just in GT3 racing, across the board in historic racing. Ollie's put on the same number of years as that BMW's done.
It does, and again, I miss the sound of that BMW engine note, that V8 rumble. It's absolutely fantastic. The Mercedes SLS and then the AMG also have an exquisite low thumping sound. Quite visceral, of course, yet Aston Martin's to do things differently. V12 was their chosen format. Again, pushing out similar power, but great. And it's just quite strange when a car you think of as almost contemporary is now in historic racing. But I can absolutely see why Sean Lynn has decided it's a good idea. These cars have been reborn.
Yes, I mean, they were sitting in people's workshops, garages, redundant. And these are perfectly raceable cars. Both are capable of being very competitive and in having a great racing platform. Again, possibly more for those drivers who are feeling maybe uncomfortable going into the very high end of WEC, GT3 or the SRO Championship, where you're getting, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of young drivers coming out of single-seaters and bringing with them the kind of sort of single-seater driving habits which are not always going to be appropriate in an endurance kind of category, which is what GT3 racing is essentially about.
Yes, you can race them in the European Le Mans Series, the Michelin Le Mans Cup, the GT3 Championships, pure and simple ones as well. And ADAC GT, you know, is there for them. The DTM in Germany is now GT3 as well. It has grown and grown. So every now and again, the manufacturer brings out a more modern model. I remember when this was launched, the 458 Italia, the Ferrari, and it was suddenly snapped up. Chevrolet, particularly in Germany with the Callaway competition team, did great things, you know, again, a dozen years ago. And the Corvette, you know, a lot of Corvette fans, normally raced in bright yellow in period, but a lot of success.
Well, you had Corvettes racing, and remember, don't forget the Vipers with that V10 Dodge engine, 7.2 litres, and between the Corvette and the Dodge Viper, just the rumble from their respective engines was, I mean, it was, well, just it was magic, particularly at night time at Spa 24.
Yeah, very, very sweet sound, that mellifluous rumble, and it really was a rumble, a roar. But great to see these cars. And again, I still think of them as relatively contemporary, but they're a dozen years old and more, some getting on to 18 years old already. But Callaway Corvette and the Corvette just had great success. With teams like Reiter Engineering running them, they also ran Camaro, but really it was Callaway competition that scored the bullseye so many times.
Well, they were great race cars. Again, the factory race themselves at Le Mans, and they won that GT category on a number of occasions. A very, very sort of almost rigidly run team. There was one rule, and that was the rule that the team principals laid down. But it was a rule, they said, we want you to run to a mandated time. Don't go slower, don't go faster, and let the race come to you rather than trying to win it, as so often happens in an endurance event, which might be 24 hours long. Win it in that first hour.
Yeah, and it must be said, one of the very greatest features of GT3, apart from the diversity of manufacturers involved, was the cars became more and more rock solid. You know, it was a formula in which you could not have to push everything right to the nth degree in terms of trying to find that final sector. They built the cars solidly because they weren't just for sprint races. Very soon after the outset, they were for longer races, and then they had to 24 hours, and it's not a good advertisement to have your car pulling up way short of the finish.
No, I mean, again, you've got to maybe retrain your brain if you've come from a single-seater background and realising that you're doing an endurance event, and you've got to look after the car, you've got to look after your tyres, you've got to look after your brakes, and there's so many different aspects to an endurance event than you would find if you're doing a 20-lap sprint race in a Formula 3 or even a Formula 2 car.
Yeah, so the demonstration will be coming towards its conclusion, and then we have the shootout to look forward to. We're going to have an array of cars, one at a time. We'll be able to see their performance and see who's going to be on top. But I'll just run you down some of the drivers. Phil Keane, Tom Christensen, Andy Priaulx, Frank Stippler, Andrew Jordan, Jake Hill, Andre Lotterer. Not a shabby one among them.
No, and believe me, every one of those drivers will want to be the quickest. So those cars will go out, they'll do an out lap, a flying lap and an in lap. So it's going to be very short, sweet, get the job done. And I don't know how many of the drivers will have actually sat in these cars prior to going into the shootout. So it'll be an interesting experience to see how they adapt to their particular brand.
And one thing they'll have to adapt to is maybe to keep their performance in check, they're going to go out on rain tyres in the shootout.
Yes.
It's out of control.
The reason I believe behind using a rain tyre was that the cars are going to be sitting in the sort of assembly area, so there are no tyre warmers. They will then go out on an out lap, and because the tyre that is used on these GT3 cars normally would be a slightly more durable tyre than you would use in a sprint event, so there was a concern about getting tyre temperature on that out lap, and then you're going on to your flying lap and you're going to nail the car, and maybe to help drivers not push themselves to the extreme limits, the rain tyre will make the car a little bit more fluid. It'll move around a lot more. It'll probably be a lot more spectacular to watch. It will trim certainly about 4 or 5 seconds off a potential time that would be attained on a slick tyre.
You'd certainly think so. Now, the SLS Mercedes, this is one I'd have seen competing in the Dubai 24 Hours, a race for many years now, nearly 20 plus years. At the end of January in the Black Falcon livery. It looks fantastic. And again, John, a livery on one car, the same body shape on another one, and they can look almost like different makes, can't they?
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness for vinyl wraps. I mean, these cars are not all painted. They've got a vinyl wrap on them. And it's just a very quick and easy way to change the graphics on a car. But just the difference in this, the visuals of this particular Mercedes, the Black Falcon team, and just H&R is a preparation company in Germany that specialises in Mercedes for the cars. Look as if they're coming to the completion of this demonstration. There is the Mercedes, the SLS.
Still rumbling away at low speed. Now a car, actually, John, this Porsche we'd have seen race in the Kyle Army 9 hours. Audrain Motorsport entered it, and as a boy he said his face was pressed to the fence. Look at the badge on the door, perfect circle. That was on David Piper's car when he was racing there in the late 60s. And Audrain, as a young boy, grew up dreaming of that car, idolised it, made a business career, got the success, and has echoed that livery on the side of his Porsche.
And David Piper is present this weekend. He was at the house, at Goodwood House last night for a governor's dinner, and David, I think, is 93 years of age. What a legacy of history of motor racing, primarily in Ferraris, but of course he did race also a Porsche 917 and I think a Lola T70 Coupe. I think what a collection of race cars David Piper accumulated over a racing career, but it's coming up to nearly 70 years.
It's extraordinary, and this car, as I said, the tribute livery for when Audrain Motorsport watched David Piper and Richard Atwood win the RAN 9 hours in their 917 in 1969. So it lives on. There it is, perfect circle. It's turned a perfect circle, one would say.
And that's the kind of car that would be absolutely perfect for this sort of new retrospective GT3 series that's coming on stream this year.
Yeah, you choose your manufacturer, you choose what you like. There are cars, I don't know actually how many cars have ever been homologated for GT3, but it's an enormous number, and quite a few manufacturers like Ferrari, of course, they've moved on from the 458. We've got the 296 GT3. In time, the cycle keeps turning. Yeah,
the one thing about Ferrari, particularly with the 458, then the 488, and now the 296, Ferrari have made a decision when they designed the car to incorporate certain elements that would be very racing orientated, where other manufacturers made their cars, designed their cars very much more as a road car, then adapted it to racing. And that, I think, gave Ferrari certainly an advantage. And again, another brand that did very similar things was McLaren. McLaren's the only brand out there with a full carbon fiber tub.
GT3 time, and Chris Goodwin was one of the first drivers out on the track. He's McLaren through and through, but it was great to see the cars that set the GT3 ball rolling with, in among their Ferrari, they've been absolutely the backbone of the category. The BMW Z4 made a great sound, won a great number of races, also to the SLS AMG Mercedes, and those cars have looked great. But let's go down to Ed Foster, because he will be with us very shortly in the collection area. The Audi R8 LMS, quick then, quick now, constant evolution. But GT3 is still existing, but it's also already a historic series. So great are these cars. People want to race them, they want to chase them, and we're looking forward to those kicking off this year. But let's go down now to Ed.
Right, well, I'm down in the pit lane. The cars are getting ready to go, and there has been furious activity here because everyone's been jumping on the tyre pressures. These cars have just been going out round and round. Tyre pressures are built up. So I've just noticed, follow me, so some are on wet tyres, and you think, well, it's bone dry. Why they're on wet tyres? It's because they get warmer quicker. So if you have slicks on and they're not warm, you leave the pits and you've got no grip at all. But one of the cars I did notice is on slicks. Yes. Got the Aston here. We've got Phil being strapped in. Probably not the best time to actually have a chat to him, but why not? Let's try and. Actually, I'll tell you what. Maybe you can help. Stop running away. So you're on you're on slicks here. Hang on. Well, here's Nick Padmore. This car's on slicks. Everyone else is on wet. So do you guys know something?
Yeah, it's not going to rain.
Well, I know that, but they're not going to cool off.
No, I think they're just doing this session for. Phil Keane wanted these tyres on.
Right, you know nothing as always, Nicholas.
We're going to put wets on, I'm sure.
Right, well, look, that's the whistle go. Look, follow me. Let's just check the rest of the cars. We've got the Camaro here. Frank Stipler in that, I think 650 horsepower. Some amazing drivers. But the thing with this is they've got to be on it from the first corner. So I would say look out for Andy Prio, whose background is in hill climbing, where you need to be on it from the start.
Well, there's not much of a hill here, but there's a bit of a slope, and I know exactly what you mean. But let's explain how this format is going to work. The shootout, we had it with the sidecars. It was a roaring success. And the GT3, let's understand how the format works for them. So the stage is set. The Camaro, one of the first car out onto the track. This is their sight. This is their chance to get a feel of the cars. A lot of these cars have been already driven, but by another driver. We just heard Phil Keane's been passing on messages to Nick Padmore, and Nick will be going out to see what he can learn, he can glean. It's very, very busy. Sorry, it's the other way around. It's Phil's in the car now, Nick first off in the Aston Martin V12 Vantage. But we're building towards a shootout, the first of two shootouts. We'll get an aggregate victory, I suppose, 17:20 this afternoon or thereabouts. You've had a good long day, but definitely you want to be trackside to see them come through, delivered one at a time, and see where those times go. They're going to get faster and faster. And the Ferrari out on the track has Jake Hill at the wheel, the reigning British Touring Car Champion. He's starting to do quite a lot of GT3 racing already, and he's hit the ground running, as you'd expect.
Well, very much a change of direction possibly for Jake Hill, who won the British Touring Car Championship last year. Saw him race here in the revival in an AC Cobra. A fantastic race, and was just pipped at the post by the TBR Grandeur, but both touring car drivers coming first and second, and Jake Hill now getting a flavour of GT3 racing. And I can imagine that Jake, given an opportunity, will grab it, because it, for me, would be the next natural progression for an extremely talented race driver.
Well, in fact, I've already seen him compete in 6 hours in Abu Dhabi at the start of February. He was a couple of weekends ago at Mugello for 12 hours. So he's got track time, and he's, he just absolutely nailed it from the outset. But also, he's such a competitive beast. He'll be just dialing in, getting a feel. His last experience here, as you said, was in something entirely different. But the BMW Z4 being muscled around by Andy Prio. There it is, white with those two shades of blue and red flashes on the flanks, BMW racing colours. And Andy is a driver, of course. He is almost BMW the whole way through. But then again, he has been racing for Ford in recent years. But he's delivered big time for them in touring cars, most notably.
And I mean, just watching Andy Prio in the way that he just places the BMW, the way the car isn't moving around as maybe some of the other GT3 cars will do, and that's just an illustration of his ability and his skill, and that sort of intuitiveness and feel that he has for the car under him.
Different engine notes, V12, it's an Aston Martin, and it's Phil Keane on board in a livery that I haven't seen before, the Spider-Man livery. You can see the spider eyes on the front. And again, these race all around the world. This has been racing in the States, so it's great to have these different shapes and colours coming out to play. 7 drivers are going around the track at the moment. Andrew Jordan top of the pile at the moment. He's driving the Chevrolet Corvette, one of Matthew Holmes' cars. Jake Hill's in the other one, which is the black Ferrari. But at the moment, Andrew Jordan's 1 minute 17.079 seconds, but some quicker and quicker times are coming in. Tom Christensen is out there as well. We'll look for him.
Well, I think we're going to be almost spoiled for choice out of the drivers on course. Andrew Jordan has gone quickest, 1:17.09. Andre Lotterer just behind him by about 8/10 of a second. Andrew Pio drawn to 3rd place, but literally by the lap and almost by the sector. Greer State Curtin sectors on her timing and scoring, popping up almost for each driver as they go on to the next lap.
Starting to really push the limit. The Corvette getting very, very wide there. Indeed, the Writer Engineering car with Frank Stipper on board. Just a moment ago, we saw him going sideways, very sideways in that exquisite little Ferrari sports car. But Frank just so adaptable. He's probably done almost as many GT3 races as pretty much anyone else. Master of the Nürburgring.
Absolutely, he's won 3 Nürburgring 24 hours, and I mean, he's such. You see, Frank, he almost looks like what I would call your archetypical accountant. He's such a normal-looking man, but in a race car, wow, what a legacy he has had, particularly at Nürburgring.
Interesting. Few drivers just getting the heat in their tyres, getting the feel for things, and backing off a little bit. But certainly Frank, he doesn't need heat. He can just press on. But at the moment, it must be said, he's down 6th out of the 7 cars, but he's got a big improvement coming his way. Second part of the Woodcut corner, the tail kicking out a little bit. Into the chicane, out of the chicane, neat, tidy, trying to get the power down, but not too soon over the painted curbing on the outside. Target time, 1 minute 15 by Phil Keane in the Aston Martin. Where will Stippler move? He moves up a tiny bit, goes up from 6th to 5th, but at the moment he's 3.3 seconds down in that Corvette. But it's only practice, building towards the first of the shootouts, which is this afternoon, gone 5 o'clock.
So it is the Aston Martin. Phil Keane now breaking into the 1 minute 14 second lap times, and we've never seen, and these are not even current GT3 cars, we've never seen a current GT3 car lapping here at Silverstone. Listening to what Dario Franchitti was talking about with the track diversion of the GMA 50, getting down to a 1 minute 5 second lap. Well, the speed of these GT3 cars in their period is pretty impressive.
No, it really is, and it keeps on moving. The Chevrolet Corvette, not so well known. It was largely, sorry, that's the Camaro. I beg your pardon. I thought one thing, said the other, but it raced very much at the end of this little period, the first 6-7 years of GT3, the years encapsulated in the new historic series. But listen, that engine note, it rumbles. Of course, this was a car effectively modelled to ape the shape of the one that the initial Camaro in the late 60s, early 70s, and I think it's the better for it, actually. It looks exquisite to me.
Yeah, the iconic Z28, which was a very, very successful race car, particularly in North America, in Trans Am racing in the 60s and into the early 70s.
Interesting, look at the bodywork at the back, what they'd call the trunk lid, vibrating away under that huge rear wing. Huge rear wing is very much of the essence of a GT3. Look at it vibrating. It's not just my eyes, but...
I mean, it is chattering away. That gives you an indication of the way the air is being sucked via, such as they have the diffusers at the back. You can just about see under the car there's a very sort of flattened out diffuser, and that in conjunction with the rear wing is what's causing the downforce, giving the car that additional grip at the rear.
So I just want to clarify, earlier I was talking about Frank Stipper in the Corvette. Frank Stipper's in this one, he's in the Camaro. It's Andrew Jordan, who's second fastest, who was in that white Corvette. Apologies to all concerned, we'll get it right when he gets to the shootout. But right, 2 cars in 1 minute 14 category. It's number 1, it's the Aston Martin V12 Vantage GT3 with Phil Keane on board. The other driver, 4/10 of a second, effectively down in second place, is Andrew Jordan. He's the driver of this white, red and blue flash German-based Corvette, and again you can see John, he's pushing really hard, trying to find the front end grip that's not necessarily there, but he presses on.
But Andrew again is such a talented driver in whatever he jumps into, so literally we're giving the Corvette a workout. I mean, the fundamental balance of a Corvette extremely good, but here at Goodwood, a circuit that we're not familiar to see a Corvette race, it's all a little bit of learning and going through the process. Backed off a little bit now, coming down, 11 straight.
What we've seen in a couple of shots is the Audi not going quite at full speed, but that's Tom Christensen. Maybe there's an issue with his Audi R8. LMS, because we know if there's a chance to be quick in the car, Tom grabs it with both hands. He knows Goodwood well, but we'll see if that picks up. He might be learning something he can use for later, but really, you'd have to say you need to be closer to the front to go into this afternoon's shootout number 1 with real confidence. But right now, it's Phil Keane in the Aston Martin, top of the table. Andrew Jordan in the Chevrolet Corvette Z06.R, as they always call it. Haven't seen too much of the Porsche. This is very much your sort of background. Lee Maxted Page's car with Audrain Motorsport on board, and he's a driver who certainly knows how to pedal, one of the reigning World Endurance Champions of 2024.
Yeah, Andre Lotterer staying offline to let the Audi go through unimpeded. So probably Andre Lotterer will feel, well, I did my lap time best is a 1:15.6. I mean, I'm within a thousandth of a second of Jake Hill in third place, so there's a little bit more there, possibly. There he is. Is that Tom Christensen?
Yeah, this is Christensen. Yeah, this is an early R8 LMS Ultra, as it was, Marcus Owenhuysen's car. Now he's going for it. Now he's starting to put some colour on his screen, pick up the pace.
So he's now got just under a minute. He can complete this lap, do one further lap. Tom Christensen, I mean, what a driver, what a talent. 9 Le Mans victories, and just so good at understanding how you bring a car home after a long endurance event.
Yeah, he understood the shape of the battle at Le Mans, and just extraordinary success. He does improve, but he can do another flying lap because the checkered flag has yet to be shown. This is the practice session. Get your sighter laps in for the shootouts, which this afternoon, just after 5 o'clock, and tomorrow as well. But at the moment, he's down 4 and a bit seconds off the pace, but he can wrap this up, bring it home. Doesn't look as though anyone else, with the exception perhaps of Andy Prio in the white BMW, will be able to improve any further. But at the moment, it's Phil Keane, top of the charts, 1 minute 14.4 seconds. He may well stay there in the Aston Martin.
Just got a glimpse of Andre Lotterer coming out of Adwick, and he is on still there. He is just going past. You can see, so he's looking to make up time. So into the first part of St Mary's, and then the cut back to the left, and easy to run too wide, just clip the white line, and then of course it's grass thereafter. So looking, this is, I would say, Andre Lotterer, potentially this is going to be his best lap of all that he's completed already. He's done this 7-timed lap for Andre Lotterer, and I think this is going to be quicker than his previous best.
He's going to be very close, but he's 1 1/4 seconds down. As you said, he's in 4th place, a whisker behind Jake Hill's Ferrari, but certainly pushing on the front, weaving around there under braking.
But he's got personal bests in 2 sectors, so I think, well, let's wait and see how he manages this final sector through the chicane. Gets so close to the barriers now. The drive across start-finish line, the timing line, there it is. So has he improved?
No, slightly slower.
No, that's a shame. So he didn't improve, but wasn't for the lack of effort.
No, well, like all top racing drivers, he'll bank the data from each of those laps. His different approaches to different points. The tyres were coming up to temperature, but that's wetted my whistle. But when it's quick fire and we can follow a car the whole way around the lap and really see what these tip-top drivers are doing, it's going to be absolutely fantastic later this afternoon. But just, John, so good to see these early day GT3 cars sort of back out on the circuit. It was a blink of an eye ago we were commentating on them in period, but they're back, and you just realise the evolution, how it's moved on from 2012, which was the youngest of these cars.
Well, what's happened is with these cars sitting, as I say, in workshops or people's garages, it was an opportunity to develop another race series for GT3 cars. Not for the current models, but for the models that are sitting doing nothing. They're perfectly good cars, they're perfectly raceable, there's all the backup availability for parts for them. Sean Lynn has grabbed the opportunity and he's going to run this series, and there is a great deal of support from owners of cars, and people are now running around looking for GT3 cars of that era.
It's always the way. It normally comes a little longer after they've been parked up and been superseded, but certainly the popularity has been extraordinary, and also just continues to spread around the globe. So the Aston Martin with Phil Keane in the practice for the GT3 Shootout, clear by just under 4/10 of a second in his Aston Martin from Andrew Jordan's Chevrolet Corvette, then almost 8/10 of a second back to Jake Hill in the Ferrari 458 Italia, a whisker ahead of the Porsche of Andre Lotterer. Andy Prio down in 5th place. They're really pretty close, those top few crews. It'll be tighter when we get to the shootout. Then Frank Stippler and Tom Christensen, Chevrolet Camaro and Audi complete the 7. Those times will be coming down. And let's take a look at the highlights. Following hot on the heels, and the GT3 demonstration became the drivers going out to practice for the two-part GT3 Shoot-Out, and Jake Hill set the early pace in his Ferrari 458 Italia. Andy Prio pressing on. Well, it had to be in BMW, but it was the Aston Martin that rose to the front, with Phil Keane absolutely getting his approach right. Audrain Motorsport giving attack, particularly just before the checkered flag fell, pushing right to the edge in his Porsche. But Andrew Jordan in the Corvette was neat, tidy, and ran very, very close to the front. In second place at the end. Chevrolet Camaro, not seen on these tracks for quite some time, but that was going well too. So it was the very, very top drivers seeing what they can do. They're learning how the cars will behave, what their tyres will do for them. But the GT3 Shootout is coming up, and these top drivers really honed their form, and we can't wait to see what they can deliver.